gotta give props to people, multiple kid parents though. One's a workload. One is a workload.
Sarah, am I supposed to wear a mask if I go there with these other people? Okay.
Yes, I mean, yeah, but can you just hold it, and then if you're 6 feet from them, you don't. If, Mayor Paxton?
Here.
Mr. Eisenbeis?
Present.
Present.
Ms. Nelson?
Here.
Dr. Ween?
Here.
Mr. Knox?
Here.
Mr. Mosier?
Here.
And Mr. Christensen?
Here.
Correspondence or agenda changes? We do have a ceremonial night today, right? Honoring Patty Pecan. And I'm gonna come forward, there are family members here, Gus and Brian, to accept, yeah, we don't wanna come up and we'll sort of.
Sorry, I'm deaf as opposed.
Yeah, let's go up here.
Hi, Gary. Long time.
It's been a long time. Gus, let's go up here, and we will maintain like 6 feet distance, just so I can be able to read this.
I trust it.
Yeah, no, good. God bless. Okay, one on each side, how do you want it? Okay,
You're doing fine.
I'm doing fine, depends who you talk to. Office of the Mayor, City and Borough of Sitka proclamation honoring posthumously Patricia Patty Picard. Whereas Patty Picard came to Sitka in 1960 as a wife and business partner to her husband Oliver Porky Picard and a mother to their young children. And whereas in 1967, Patty began teaching middle school mathematics, taught Valerie algebra in the 8th grade, first at the Etland Street School, and soon after that at Blasey Middle School. She served generations of Sitka at Blatchley, and mentored many young teachers there over the career. And whereas, beginning in 1969, Patty was an active member of an officer of the Teachers Honorary Society, Delta Kappa Gamma. She was a president of the local Iota chapter in 1975-1978, and state president from 1985 to 1987. And whereas Patty was a longtime member of the Sitka American Cancer Society in their daffodil sale for many years. And whereas Patty was known to her handmade gifts, which she bestowed on everyone she came in contact with. She was very active in Don Caesar's evening woodworking class, where she made bird feeders, doll cradles, Norwegian stacking boxes, and even progressed to making Morris chairs. She was such a dedicated and faithful student that they awarded her a prize of free tuition for the rest of her life. And whereas Patty was the first female member of the Sitka Rotary Club and the first female Rotarian in Alaska, joining soon after Rotary began admitting women in 1987. She led the Rotary Rose Sale for many years, was an active member of the club, and was president of the club in 1993 and 1994. And whereas in 1991, Patty was a founder of the Babies and Books Group for Sitka and was an active member producing the monthly newsletters and mailing books out to Sitka families with young children. And whereas in her waning years, Patty took good care of Sitka ducks at Swan Lake, feeding them cracked corn on her daily walk around the lake from her home. Now therefore be it resolved that the Assembly of the City and Borough of Sitka joins all Sitkans in extending our condolences to Patty Picard's adult children, David, Christiane, and Brian, and their families, and expressing a profound appreciation for Patty Picard's life accomplishments and contributions to our community. In her long life, long before she joined Rotary, Patty practiced the Rotary motto, service above self. Signed and sealed 8th day of September by myself and attested to by Sarah Peterson. God bless you.
Thank you, ma'am.
God bless, thank you.
And while he's walking back to his chair, I would like to say to you, Brian, she was the best math teacher I ever had. She taught me 8th grade algebra.
Anyone in this room that has lived here
She was awesome.
was a math teacher.
Thank you.
Yeah, what an incredible family the Picards were, what a major influence they've had in our wonderful town. We are now under special reports, and I think we have a report from the school district. Yeah, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Assembly members and city officials. Eric Van Cise, I'm the Vice Chair of the Sitka School Board, and just wanted to give you a brief rundown or synopsis of where things are with the school district. We are in week 2 with classes in full attendance, and so far things have been going very well, and we know that that can change quickly. But as it stands now, the district is operating in the what they call the green zone. That the precautions are the same in green and yellow, but things have been going very well. At our school board meeting last week, the 5 principals gave their updates, and the most common theme that came through was that things were working well, and also how much the CARES Act that all of you helped facilitate. I know there was a lot of discussion, what a huge impact that has had in this success. The AmeriCorps, the additional AmeriCorps, every single principal just could not say enough of how invaluable they were or continue to be. So I just want to really, on behalf of the board and parents and folks, thank the city officials, the assembly, and everybody for that hard work. It's phenomenal. Also, that enabled us to do the one-to-one electronic devices for the students, along with a generous donation from the Sitka Tribe of Alaska. So things are working well there. Also to Administrator Mr. Leach, thank you on behalf of the board and other city officials and everybody. It was a hard decision with the softball tournament decision, but we appreciated from a school standpoint and a community standpoint looking out for the best interest of our community, and we know that there will be other times in the future for that. And really, just in summary, I think it's for us as a community, it's a really a moment it's a tough time, but it's a time to celebrate how a community can come together. You don't have to reach out very far to find communities in the state or around the country that are really struggling. And so far, everything that has taken place, from the Unified Command to the city officials to the assembly to our partnerships, businesses, it has not been about politics or emotion. It's about science and what's best for the kids. And the foundation that has been laid down is very, very solid. And despite what may come in the future, that foundation is going to serve us well. And I just want to thank all of you for your help and your support. And this is truly a reflection of how that is working for everybody. Thank you. Unless you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Eric, and our comments to the staff and the teachers for all the good work that they've done getting our kids back in school. Thank you very much. We're now under persons to be heard on any item not on the agenda. So I want to remind the public, when the persons to be heard, it's 3 minutes to tell us what your concerns are, but it's not an interactive exercise. It's just to listen to your comments, and then we go forward. Anyway, persons to be heard, anybody? Once, twice, 3, okay. We're now at the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item A, approving the minutes of the August 11th and 25th assembly meetings.
Second?
Comments from the public? Back to the assembly. Call for the vote?
Mayor Paxton,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbeis,
Yes.
Dr. Ween,
Yes.
and Ms. Nelson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 on item A.
We are now under board, commission, and committee appointments, item B. May I have a motion, please?
I move to appoint Ben Huey to a 3-year term on the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Second,
Second.
public comment? Yes, please.
Mr. Mayor, members of the Assembly, my name is David Nelson. I'm the chapter president for the Public Safety Employees Association. We're the bargaining group that represents. Oh, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just to make sure, is this in regards to the Parks and Rec? We've divided the motion to 2 this evening.
No, ma'am, it was in regards to police and fire commission.
Yeah, this is on
wondering.
Parks and Recs.
My apologies.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, sir. Okay, we're back to the assembly then for discussion. Call for the vote.
Okay, on the motion to appoint Ben Huey to a 3-year term on the Parks and Recreation Committee, Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Mayor Paxton,
Yes.
Dr. Ween,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
and Mr. Eisenbeis.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 7-0 on that appointment.
We're still at item B on the second motion to appoint Ben Huey to a 3-year term on the Police and Fire Commission.
I move to appoint Ben Huey to a 3-year term on the Police and Fire Commission.
Second.
Public comment? Yeah, we can come now, it's on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you.
Thought I was following the order on the agenda, sir. Thank you for your time, everyone. My name is David Nelson. I'm the chapter president for the Public Safety Employees Association. We are the bargaining group that represents the Sitka Police Department. I want to thank Ms. Peterson for sending us the agenda early so I could review it. I do not know Mr. Huey. I have not had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Huey. I'm sure he's a fine person, and it sounds like from your judgments he's going to do great on Parks and Recreation Commission. I am wanting to voice my opposition to his appointment to the Police and Fire Commission, and I'm loosely basing this on two reasons. Number one, I've not met him. It doesn't sound like Mr. Huey has reached out to anybody at the Sitka Police Department. He hasn't spoken to any of my officers or any of my administrators as far as I'm aware. I did want to do some research, and I was researching Mr. Huey, and I researched some of his social media posts, and some of them definitely appear to be anti-police or proactively wanting to do things like defund the police. I'm not sure that Sitka is really the venue for that. It would appear that someone is coming on board this commission with perhaps some type of pre-ascribed agenda, and I am concerned about that. One of the social media posts that was back in June talked about quote-unquote needless traffic stops. It referenced perhaps there should be someone within the city that pulls people over and assists them in fixing their taillights on the side of the road, et cetera. It was that kind of similar rhetoric. I'm not opposed to funding someone to help our community better, whether it's through one of the local counseling groups or one of the local hospital groups. I work closely with both of them. They do great work. But I would like to see someone on the Police and Fire Commission who is more objective. And I'm feeling that there is not a great deal of objectivity in this appointment, and I have my concerns. And that's all I want to bring to your attention.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, sir.
Other comments from the public on this nomination? Once, twice, three. Back to the assembly.
Mr. Mayor, I think I'd like to go to executive session on Mr. Huey's application. He said if we're going to be discussing anything regarding him, that he would like that discussion to occur in executive session, so I'd like to make a motion.
Second.
Well, I got to make it first. I move to go into executive session to discuss subjects that tend to prejudice the reputation and character of an individual and invite Ben Huey, or determine if Ben Huey desires a public discussion.
I'll
Second.
Okay, go ahead, Valerie.
Public comment about going into executive session? Okay. I don't know.
Okay, sorry.
I would like to add that Mr. Huey does have the right to hold the discussion in public.
His application indicated anything like that would want to be in private. Would you like this in public or private, Mr. Huey?
If they are matters related to my reputation, I would like to be in private. Thank you.
Okay.
Have we come back to the assembly already? Okay,
Does the
I'm trying,
person's-
just
or-
trying to do the job I'm supposed to be.
on the motion to go into
Yeah, right, I'm just, thanks, I didn't want to be sure. Where do I-
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you, Mr. Mayor and Assembly members. For the record, my name is George Paul. Since I've been following closely all the meetings since November, one of the issues that I saw in previous meetings was the personality discussions and appointments to a position. So I'd be supportive of the idea of going into executive session, because the comments that need to be made and the information that needs to be discussed, I don't feel would be appropriate for me to be hearing or other members of the public. So I speak in favor of going into executive session on this issue. Thank you.
thank you, sir. Other comments from the public? Yes, please.
Good evening, Assembly and Mayor. How are you guys doing today? Like I said, I think it should be public. I think the citizen here has the right to hear what's going on, and defunding the police is the wrong thing to have a person to sit in the commissioner. So please, I ask you to be heard in public, no executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Other comments from the public?
Hello, everybody. Hey, I also would like to think we should hear any comments in public concerning the commission, because anybody, if there is any anti-police rhetoric or anything, then I think that ought to be brought out in the public so we all know, because there is no room for anyone who thinks we should defund or eliminate the police department. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marshall. Other comments from the public? All right, we're coming back to the assembly. Yes, Valerie.
I voted to second this because on the application, any applicant has the right to request their character or whatever, if it's going to be discussed, they have that right to be heard in executive session so that dirty laundry or clean laundry isn't aired out in public. And it's something that's in our code that they can request, and that's why I would be a motion to go into executive session.
Yeah, we're always hesitant to go into executive session, but since he asked for it, that's a little different situation. I guess maybe there's stuff out there that wasn't in our packet, but I guess I don't see anything here that would require it, but if he asked for it, I mean, I've always felt that the best way to make somebody who's a critic of someplace like the fire police department is put them on the board, and people change their tune very quickly when they get involved. Anyway, yeah, if he wants it, sure, but I don't see the reason why.
I also made the motion to go into executive session because of his request on his application. We should follow the rules, and we can go in there and discuss. However, once we come out, I do think there should be a level of discussion, not necessarily about his character, but about views that he may hold and about his appointment.
As we will be potentially, though I think that public views, I understand where people are coming from, views that have been made public or on social media are grist for the public mill. However, as I am unsure where this conversation might be going, I think it is prudent to have it in executive session, especially since Mr. Huey requests such. And I would like to remind everyone that executive session means executive session. It's kind of like Vegas. What happens in executive session stays in executive session. And so please remember that when we go in there. So I will be voting to go into executive session for those reasons.
Okay, on the motion to go into executive session, Dr. Ween?
Yes.
Mr. Knox?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mayor Paxton? Yes. Ms. Nelson?
Yes.
And Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 7-0. We'll be meeting in room 7. Kevin, if you want to leave the meeting, and then I will call you from the room.
Thank you.
I move to reconvene as the assembly.
Second.
You can say all those in favor.
Aye.
Okay, we are back in executive session, and,
So,
I would like to, as discussed, I would like to have Mr. Huey come up and answer at least one question from me, maybe questions from others. So I'll try and be very, very kind. One of the concerns I had, and I'd heard from other people, is that there are social media posts about the stance that you have as far as defunding the police, and statements that, you know, they aren't with how I would normally look at things, probably more left, and I'm more conservative. And I certainly am not, I believe somebody kind of backhandedly accused me of trying to stifle the left's voice. That's not what I want, but I would like you to address the concerns that I have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I have made posts on social media regarding the police. I do believe that there are opportunities to lessen the load that we put on our police officers in responding to an immense variety of community problems. And I do believe that we should investigate alternatives for community investment for mental illness and domestic violence and a variety of other services that our police currently have to fulfill. I do have beliefs that I put up on social media that are untested. And as Assembly members have pointed out, a great way to test those beliefs is to try to put the work in. And with a graduate degree in public administration, I'm interested in testing out, or rather coming to the table to work with other community members to learn about the problems. I do believe that Sitka is a very different place than Seattle or New York or anywhere else. And there are opportunities here to create solutions that respect and support everyone in our community. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, somewhat. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
please.
I'm going to quote one of your Facebook posts that's particularly concerning to me. It says, "But why not defund the police and fund all these alternatives too? Why is it an either or?" I'm just going to quote part of it. And this is something that you posted. You know, it's not just that police are ineffective. In many communities, they're actively harmful. The history of policing is a history of violence against the marginalized. American police departments were originally created to dominate and criminalize communities of color and poor white workers, a job they continue doing to this day. I'm just wondering how someone with your education level can post these things and then want to join the commission. I'm not sure what your intentions are. I know that what you said your intentions are, but it just doesn't, this is just a piece. What I'm seeing on here doesn't jive with the mission that I see as the police department here in Sitka. I just want to know your comments on that.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the question. I do have an education level that afforded me an understanding of the history of the country that shows that the police in America do have a history of being involved in oppression of certain groups of people. I also believe that we need to work together as a community to find solutions. And I am not just yelling outside. I am willing to come to work at the table. I don't want to undermine the work. I strongly believe that the Assembly and the police department has the best interests of the community in mind, and I want to work together to find more solutions. Also, I want to say, if this is too controversial of an appointment for the Assembly, I totally understand, and I do not need to be appointed. I was merely putting my name out there to fulfill a vacancy, of which there are many on commissions in the city. I'm happy to serve solely in the Parks and Rec Commission, and I'm not adamant about my appointment here.
Other comments from the assembly?
Go ahead. Sorry, real quick. I still think that, like we said in the executive session, that if somebody thinks that our police department is dysfunctional, the best way to disabuse them of that is have them involved in something like the Police and Fire Commission. I think this gentleman seemed like a thoughtful person, and there's no way a thoughtful person will think after a few meetings that, I mean, and if someone's throwing verbal rocks or whatever, the best way to is if you can get them to say, to realize that to be part of the solution and not part of the problem, if we've got somebody willing to do the work, we should let them try.
Other comments on this, gentleman?
Well, are we done with questions, or are we discussing? Because I'm not having really. I've got comments, but I know Dr. Ween has some comments.
Mine is a comment, it is not a question for the applicant. Or a comment, I guess it is. Are we done with the applicant then?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure before we moved on, because it,
Yeah, yeah.
the one thing that I haven't heard discussed that I believe is important to the conversation is that the Police and Fire Commission is an advisory body only. They send recommendations up to the Assembly for further review. So it's not as if a single appointment, can make policy on its own, and it's not as if that point of view then makes the policy. It all has to come towards the Assembly first, so.
If it is just an advisory body and doesn't do much, it does have it can convene and issue conversation and tickets and all that other stuff. So it is a quasi-legal entity, but if it's only an advisory body and it's no big deal, I will also mention that it is a public meeting, and that you can attend, and that you can voice opinions and work with people there. As I had previously mentioned, the Sitka Police Department has been on an incredible roller coaster. It has been under fire, and with the hiring of Chief Beatty, I guess approximately 18 months ago, even with that, I'll call it steady hand on the tiller, the seas have been very, very rough. And with, you can just read the newspapers and various cases, etc., which make that job almost impossible. And to add a further element of, as well-meaning as it is, and I do agree with you, but as well-meaning as it is, will confuse, I think, the management and direction of the police department at this time. It's just the wrong time to have that. And so I don't get it. As you mentioned, as I heard in the quote, this is Sitka, and I think that Sitka appropriate people need to be here. And now I sound like a hick, even though I'm from the New York metropolitan area. But what you're bringing are big city ideas. And I think the gentle touch is what's needed here. And I think that there is already a trajectory at the department to try to do the right thing. And you have the ability to come at any time and participate and voice your ideas. As Steve said, Assemblyman Eisenbeitz, it is an advisory committee. But you know what? It's a very important advisory committee. And so those are my feelings. This is not the exact time. The police department needs, I'll say, solidarity behind it so it can be rebuilt. And that's just my notion on the issue. But thank you for applying. I think, you know, it's a pretty good thing.
When you answered my question, Mr. Huey, I was a yes vote, but when you responded to Mr. Mosier's, I flip-flopped. And I'll have to explain why, because, and I'm going to explain it to the rest of you. I'm the mother-in-law of a former state trooper, now a wildlife trooper. I'm an aunt of a former Sitka police officer. I've had other friends and family members in law enforcement. And I think the statement that you made was that police in America have a history of oppression against certain groups of people. Some police in America have done that. My son-in-law certainly hasn't. My nephew certainly did it. And I took issue with that, and that makes it a very hard for me to vote yes on. We do have a lot of vacancies. I thought you would be awesome on planning and zoning, but I'm probably going to vote no. Thank you.
Sorry, and Ben, I apologize. You know, I'm not good at this. I'm not trying to personally attack you, but I am attacking these ideas. And we live in really interesting times. And, you know, it's been said that this is just an advisory committee. Well, that's true, but in practice, what happens is assemblies tend to lean very heavily on the advice of the commissions. In fact, there's many discussions where we are discussing something and they say, well, the commission kind of voted on this, so there's this pressure. So you being a part of that actually does give you a lot of authority, and I'm not comfortable with that. A lot of these things, they're very nice on the outside, and I believe with good intention by many people. But there's this difference in today's society between good intentions and reality. And the reality is, human nature has a dark side. And no matter how many programs you have, no matter how many assistance things you have, society needs to know that there is restraint that's going to be applied if people violate. Basically, they start doing things they shouldn't do. And when you even have someone on this commission that espouses your views, it starts to entice that group of people. I'm not comfortable with that. Okay, we need to let, and I agree, ditto with Valerie and Dr. Wien says, we need to support solidly the police department because law and order, civil society is its foundation to our society. Is there room for improvement? Yes. I have full confidence and faith in Chief Beatty and his lieutenant that they are slowly but surely, actually quite rapidly, turning things around. You're welcome to attend the meetings, but I don't want you in that position, and I apologize if this has hurt you. It's not meant to. You do have a pretty high-level education, and it's disconcerting to me that having that level of education, you still espouse these views. I don't mean to be hurtful. I just cannot support you on this commission.
Mayor Faxon. So I'm going to agree that I think that there's actually, this time is actually the right time for somebody like Ben to be on this commission. I think embracing all parts of our community is an important piece here, and allowing for those voices to be heard and represented really too. It's not just to be able to come to those commissions, but to be able to sit in those positions to bring issues forward, whether we agree with them or not. I think it is important. From what I've heard from Ben and from what little I looked at on his online stuff, I think we're painting him as a radical in such a way that we're also asking people to not paint all police in that same light. I think the discussion around the unfortunate name of defunding the police, or the different social and racial dialogue that is going on right now it's getting painted as a black and white, us versus them, rather than a nuanced discussion. And I think the experience that Ben has could really lend to the dialogue that could happen at the Police and Fire Commission. It may just be an opportunity for him to sit and listen and understand better. and be able to take that same information and be able to shape and craft, his ideas about how we deal with things in our community, and then also how the groups that he represents and the people that he has further dialogue with would maybe bring some of this forward. I think it's an important voice, and I personally am very very supportive of having as many voices around the table as we possibly can. And I do thank Ben for applying, and if you want to apply for planning and zoning, you could make it 3 in my book.
Call for the vote.
Okay, on the motion to appoint Ben Huey to a 3-year term on the Police and Fire Commission, Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Dr. Ween?
No.
Mr. Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Ms. Nelson?
No.
Mr. Knox?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
No.
And Mayor Paxton?
And it's not controversial, no.
Okay, the motion fails, 3-4.
No clapping, please. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, item C, could I have a motion, please?
I move to approve ordinance 2020-45 on second and final reading, amending the official zoning map to rezone Lot 2 Sheldon Jackson Campus Subdivision Number 2 from multifamily residential R2 to cemetery C.
Second.
Public comment?
Mayor Paxton, can you please use your mic? I can't hear you.
Yep, it was off, Kevin, I apologize. Okay, back to the assembly. Dr. Wayne?
As stated at the last meeting and previous meetings, this is an idea whose time is long overdue, and I heartily support this rezoning to cemetery. It's a very meaningful action that we're taking.
Concur. Other comments from the assembly? Call for the vote.
Okay, on the motion to approve this ordinance on second and final reading, Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Ms. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Knox?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Mayor Paxton?
Yes.
And Dr. Ween?
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 on item C.
We're going to note item D. May I have a motion?
I move to approve ordinance 2020-46 on second and final reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2021 FY 2020 purchase orders.
Second.
Public comment? Yes, please.
Mr. Mayor, Assembly, do I understand this right? You guys are going to make supplemental appropriations for the year 2021, when the year 2020, you guys are not sure of? Am I confused on this?
We could have Ms. Haley come up and explain to you, but I think if I'm wrong, but all we're doing is taking something that was supposed to be done last year that hasn't been paid yet, so we're just moving in so we can pay for it, and it's a bookkeeping measure, ma'am.
Yeah, I know, I used to bookkeep for Kmart when, before computers came out. I worked in the cash cage.
Okay?
Okay, this is kind of makes, so you're doing appropriations for the year 2021. And you're telling me you're having stuff from year 2020 purchases. And here we've had this thing happen to our country. No one's working, no one's doing anything, and you're having appropriations. I mean.
Mr. Mayor, point of order, we're not allowed to.
Yeah, you're right, I'm sorry.
So.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
You bet, thank you.
Other comments from the public? Yep, yes.
I'll just read the backup. It's just a short thing.
Yeah.
It says, at the end of the fiscal year, there are often purchase orders for work that is ongoing or a product that has been ordered but not delivered. When this happens, the budget for the fiscal year that just ended is reduced and the current fiscal year budget is increased. Year to year, this is often a similar amount. For example, in the water fund, the fiscal year 19 open purchase orders were 23,776. So the fiscal year budget was increased by that amount. And it goes on to explain it. And it's done a lot in accountings. I took accounting classes for many years. My CPA always had me do the accounting adjustments so that everything, that was still out there got washed away, and then you started all over with accounts payables and receivables and whatnot. It's just a housekeeping issue.
Yeah, Dr. Wayne.
As I think that explanation was most excellent, and thank you for reading it, Valerie. In order to achieve perfect clarity, there are several items, the general fund, 147,000 plus, electrical fund, et cetera. I was wondering if Ms. Haley could just spend a moment to talk about what those amounts are for, and potentially why they had to be moved from one budget to the next.
So yes, and part of the reason that we do have some of these open POs that need to be rolled over into the new year is because of COVID. COVID slowed things down. I think an example is a vehicle that was ordered in, I believe it was October of 2019, so ordered early on in the fiscal year, but then the plant shut down, and so we still haven't received the vehicle, and therefore we haven't paid for the vehicle. So that's an example. Other examples of open POs are street aggregate. So we have an order in to get material to throw down on our streets during the winter. Let's see, we have software renewals in the electric fund for our SCADA. Let's see. So we have an asphalt recycler. That was another thing that was, it's not an off-the-shelf item. So that was ordered, but not received. Some of these are higher. Obviously the vehicles are higher. Some of these are just a couple $100, orders made before the end of the year that just weren't closed out.
Other comments or questions from the Assembly? Call for the vote.
Okay, on the motion to approve this ordinance on second and final reading, Mr. Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Mayor Paxton?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Dr. Ween?
Yes.
Ms. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Knox?
Yes.
And Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
And the motion passes 7-0 on item D.
Item E, may I have a motion, please?
I move to approve ordinance 20-47, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2020 and 2021, reappropriations and supplemental appropriations.
Second.
Public comment? Back to the Assembly. Comments from the Assembly? Call for the vote.
Okay, on the motion to approve this ordinance on second and final reading, Mayor Paxton?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Knox?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Dr. Ween?
Yes.
And Ms. Nelson?
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 on item E.
Item F, may I have a motion, please?
I move to approve ordinance 2020-48 on second and final reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2021 Green Lake Phase 1 supplemental capital appropriation.
Second.
Public comment? Okay, back to the Assembly. Do you want to make a quick comment, Mr. Administrator?
Yep, thanks, Mayor. Again, this is basically due to a delay of getting the Green Lake Phase 1 loan that we applied for with the USDA. Rates were very, very low, so there's a large influx of applications. I have no reason to believe that we will be denied that loan. The hope is still that we will never touch this appropriation, and hope that the loan will come through in the meantime. So the risk here is that if we don't pass this, we cannot accept any of the bids because we would not have the money appropriated to accept that bid. If we did so without the money, that's we're looking at an anti-deficiency type violation. Also, something to keep in mind, If, in the off chance that we do have to use this funding, it would go towards just phase one of this project in a three-phase project. So the USDA loan funds could be used for future phases of the project, all falling within the Green Lake project. Again, we hope to not have to touch this funding in phase one, and hope that the USDA loan will come through before then.
Any info from USDA this last week? Our lobbyist?
I would say Scott and Melissa probably have the
Please.
best pulse on that one.
And Mr. Administrator, if you could explain to the public too, after they're done, what would happen if we don't get that loan at all?
Yeah, absolutely. If we don't get that, or if we don't get any sort of appropriation, or if we do not get that loan, we won't be able to sign off on any of the bids, which means we would delay the Green Lake project for at least a year. And then our costs would increase as we continue this into the next year, as the cost of construction and maintenance increases.
And well, I would just to quickly add on to what John said, if for some reason this loan didn't come through for phase two, we would use this appropriation for phase two and be seeking additional funding for phase three. I explained in the memo that we actually have more working capital available in the fund because of the refunding that we've recently done. So we have capital available, not to do the whole three-phase project, but for the short term. But given the good terms of this loan, it is without a doubt something we want to pursue because we'll need the capital. In terms of the update, we were working with them last week. I think we kind of submitted the final documentation. They go through review processes so that when you physically press the button to submit everything, that it is all pretty much already approved by the various departments. So
The only thing that I would add to that is just a little bit of timeline. We were very hopeful that things will come through quick because that's what we want. In speaking with the USDA folks, it sounds like that because of their backlog and their time that's drug on long, as long as it has, that if they were to be accepted now, then it'd be essentially a 30 to 60 day period before we'd get notification of that, and then another 30 to 60 day period before we get paperwork in on it. So it's still a delay, and that's the reason that we move to fund now, or to at least back it now, so that we can know that it won't be till this winter before we'll know.
Right, Dr. Wayne?
This is a three-phase project. Are the three phases essentially independent? So you do phase one, and let's just say there are problems with funding for 2 and 3. It's okay that it's just phase one and that kind of thing? Or are they interdependent, and we really do need all three phases to make everything work?
Well, we believe that we're going to need to do all three phases. But as far as phase one of the things that we want to do is do the assessment, as well as we have repairs that need to be done, and then we have assessments. And those assessments are going to help us guide us on the subsequent phases.
Yeah. I do understand why this is necessary.
Sure.
But I have my trepidations when I hear all the verbiage saying, on the one hand, well, we hope we won't have to use the money, and we hope. Reminds me of a movie, Hope Floats. And the important thing here is, again, is understanding, what the contingencies are. It's disturbing to me, and now this is a personal opinion, that savings that were obtained through the refinance of bonds are not going to be put back into the city per se. And so, it's like I just have that bit of uncertainty, though I understand what's going on. And it's going to be an interesting thing if the money doesn't come across, whether it's now or sometime at a future phase. So you have to understand my hesitancy, because I don't really see contingency planning. So that's what I'm disturbed about.
Scott, question for you. what effect does this appropriation have in the short term on your infrastructure, long-range infrastructure plans and repairs, and then potentially in the long term if this loan does not come through? Because I would assume that you have projects that you want to tackle immediately. Does appropriating this money prevent you from doing that? And then as a wrap-up, do you anticipate any of this appropriation to have effect on the rates that you ask us for in the next budget cycle?
So there's several questions there. One is kind of, I think we're working on an assumption that this work isn't upfront and critical to be done. You know, if when we talk about deferred maintenance, we've deferred long enough, and it's time to move forward on the maintenance process. So does this fit into our short-term range? Yes, absolutely it does. We need to do the work. As far as long-term planning goes, if we had an unlimited capital fund, we would definitely be planning more long-term work, but we don't have that unlimited capital fund. We do hope, as Dr. Ween pointed out, that we can get the funding that we need or that we would wish for at exceptionally low rates so that we can continue to have this capital in reserve. If we don't, the work still needs to be done. So I just make sure we're clear that the work on Green Lake really needs to proceed.
And I'm not doubting
Sure.
that. I'm saying that if we didn't have to appropriate this money, chances are you have other projects you would like to do with it. Are any of those projects critical that now you're going to have to come to us for another appropriation because we can't do those now? And that's the short term.
At this point, I don't have anything lined up for this money at this time.
Okay, great. And then do you anticipate the appropriation of this money coming back in the next budget cycle with your request for a rate increase?
No.
Thank you.
Other comments from the Assembly?
I was just gonna ditto what Dr. Ween says too. Like, we do need to be planning for, it's good to, and I know that, I can see that you understand this, that we have to hope for the best, plan for the worst, planning for the worst, meaning we don't get that loan. We still have, phase one is absolutely critical, and so we're gonna spend the money, our own money if we have to, and hope we get the loan for it, as you'd explained. But I was just supporting what Dr. Ween said there. Thank you.
Yeah, John.
One thing I'd like to add, and I think I said this in the last meeting as well, and I don't want this to be a sky is falling type comment. It's really not. I just need to outline the risks. And we haven't done maintenance on that facility in true form in 39 years. And it's getting to the point where insurance coverage is getting to be a problem and very expensive, which will be another conversation in a future meeting. And if that equipment does fail because we cannot complete the maintenance on it or do an evaluation of the needs, then there is potential for much higher costs to run diesel as backup. Again, not a sky is falling, just a risk that needs to be known. And I would also argue that the savings from the early refinancing is being passed on to the citizens in the form of, I'll call it dividends, meaning we have more working capital available now to be able to complete this work without having to borrow as much money, which will then in turn not be higher rates on our citizens. Thanks.
And just to add on to that, to kind of answer one of your kind of questions, the savings from the bonding can only be spent on capital. We have no other option for that.
Just real quick, getting this work done on Green Lake in one form or another has been on the list of things we need to do ever since I was first on the Assembly in '98. And that was 22 years ago, which doesn't seem possible, but and we've been pushing it off. And so we have a chance, first of all, we have a chance to get it done. And second, I think it's reached the point where if we don't, I mean, like John said, the risk is going up every year. We got to do this. And it's not like it's something we really have a whole lot of choice on.
Yes, Dr. Wayne?
Just one last comment. I'm certainly not saying the work doesn't need to be done. It's clear it does. My concern is always with contingency finance. And with any project that you do, you always set aside a certain amount for contingency. And what is contingency? But the unknown, that if things don't go exactly correctly, you have at least budgeted that in. And the way things are going fiscally in this country, I have a certain, I'll just say, a tiny bit of concern that some fundings, since everybody is in need, might not come through. And that's all I want to hear, not that Green Lake will not be performed, but the what if, in this case, at this time, I think becomes a very legitimate question. We're not going to get any help from the state, so I'm sure you're all aware of that.
Other comments?
I was just going to say thank you very much. These weren't meant as negative. Appreciate it.
Call for the vote. Thank
Okay,
you.
on the motion to approve ordinance 2020-48 on second and final reading, Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Mayor Paxton,
Yes.
Dr. Ween,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
and Mr. Eisenbeis.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 on
Excellent.
item F.
Excellent. Can we take a break?
Okay. 5-minute break. Approve the hire offer for Michelle Murdoch as Human Resource Director. You want to talk to this, John?
Do I want a motion on the table?
Thank you. A
I
motion,
move to
please.
approve a higher offer for Michelle Murdoch as Human Resources Director as recommended by the Municipal Administrator.
Right, second.
Second.
Public comment? Okey dokey. Back to you, John, you want to talk to this before somebody talks about it?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. As you know, we've had a Human Resources Director position vacant for quite a while, and we've had a few touch and goes trying to fill that position. Sharon's been doing an amazing job helping out in her position. And we also have Kimberly, who's been serving remotely as our interim HR director, who's also one of our attorneys. Been through a few rounds of interviews, and an interview panel, as I said in the memo, consisted of Jay Sweeney, Sarah Peterson, and Kimberly Garrity. Brought forward some names to me. I had a discussion with Michelle Murdoch. She's currently serving as the HR director in the city of Unalaska. And she's looking to move as an opportunity for growth and advancement. And she's recently received her master's degree in Human Resources and Employment Relations from Penn State University. I'm very excited about bringing her here, and you will see in the fiscal note, most importantly, I hope you guys have learned at this point that I'm a fan of tightening the belt. So I want to explain through some of these numbers. The position is funded at step F, range 37. I'm bringing Michelle in at 37D full-time. The rest of the benefits are outlined here, but I know the one that'll cause some question here is the moving allowance, which is allowed in the personnel policies of up to $15,000. I've offered her the full $15,000 with the understanding that she's coming from Dutch Harbor and has no commercial air service to get here. She will be chartering her own plane to get her family and household goods here, and the rest will have to be barged. It's going to be a very expensive move, and then she'll be looking for some storage in the meantime. So I wanted to give her that flexibility with that benefit that's due. Again, I said we're coming in under budget with the range and the books. She's the position is currently funded at 37 step F, and I've offered the position at 37D. So again, she's very well qualified. I think you'll see from her resume that she's been working in the HR world for quite a while. She's worked in many industries, including the hospital and medical care industry. I think she'll be a great fit here in Sitka, and I look forward to bringing her on board.
Questions or comments from the Assembly? Valerie?
I'm just curious as to, first of all, how much we've been paying Ms. Garrity to be acting HR director. And then I did do some research in Google on the city of Unalaska, and I don't see what their fiscal year 21 budget is for the HR assistant or whatever it is she was doing up there, but I see that last year it's 85,000, and we're going to give her, what, 98, 99, so that's like a $15,000 annual raise per year. So once again, my fiscal conservative is questioning. Thank you.
I can answer those questions. Right now, Ms. Garrity's under contract. $8,800 a month is the engagement letter we have with her for her interim HR services, and that's billed to us monthly. As far as Ms. Murdoch's previous position, I believe when I talked to her, her most recent salary was $93,000, but she's also given housing in her current job, something she will not get here. So this was to a little bit of a raise to entice her to come here, along with the moving expenses to bring in a qualified individual.
Other comments from the Assembly? Yes, Steve.
Well, I think if you can live in Unalaska, I think that Sitka would be a step up in an easier place to live. But have you got any sense through your interview process of her, and it sounds as if there's a family that would be moving, their ability to remain in Sitka, climate-wise, geography-wise, for a long time. Because I do notice on the resume a lot of different experiences in a shorter amount of time. So if we're investing heavily in someone, I would like that return from them as well.
Best I can say is there were no red flags telling me that she would not stay in Sitka long-term. She's very excited about coming here, and I would say the moves that have happened, you will see that she's consistently moved up in her career. It's not bouncing from position to position. She loves Alaska. There are some personal issues also why she would like to come here that I'd rather not discuss at the table, but I have faith that she will be a long-term Sitka resident.
Dr. Wayne?
One of the reasons I don't like this particular process in hiring is I feel boxed out of being able to ask a candidate questions. And so that has always been a level of concern. And even though I know it says that you have to get our permission for being a head of a department, it is almost pro forma. We get your report or an administrator report. We have no access except for a few pages of curriculum vitae. And in essence, we have to make a decision on that. And so I find with this particular applicant, I'm sure she is really great, but there are certain things I would definitely like to ask her. I do have to say that you stated that she's looking for opportunity to move for growth. And I think there was a Monkees song, for those old enough for you to remember it, and it's "I'm Not Just Your Stepping Stone," which is an interesting song. Google it. But in segueing with Mr. Eisenbeitz, the question is this just another stepping stone position? And I've outlined her CV, and I see lots of movement here. And there are just some basic questions I would like to ask. For example, there's that 7/17 to 9/18, she's listed as HR for LifeWorks. And then for 7/17 to 9/18, it's Puget Sound Bank. Were those simultaneous jobs? I do not know, what that work situation was. But also, it says that she was there till 9/18, and she hasn't been in Unalaska very long, and now there's a movement, regardless of personal issues. And I do see that there's been a lot of movement if you go back in her CV, though I'm sure she's an excellent candidate. Again, this is a time where I feel hamstringed as to wanting to ask and meet the candidate to help affirm some basic questions that I have. As a secondary note, Garrity, if you round it off on a yearly salary without benefits, is $100,000 a year. And that's 8,800 months times 12, it's 98,000 rounded off. And so, and I presume that's not Garrity's full-time job. And that, so in essence, this is quite a hefty consultant fee for a part-time job. So if we factor all this other stuff in, Garrity, though I'm very happy, I met her, she's a very intelligent, capable individual, but in dealing with the amount of money, it seems like a lot, and I don't know what the contract shows, what her hours are, what her duties are, and that's another thing that would be nice to view. So I'm a little conflicted with Ms. Murdoch, even though I know that she'd probably be most excellent, because the process doesn't allow me any ability to participate. So, thank you.
Yeah, hiring department heads is the purview of the administrator. We approve his decisions. We've been without an HR person for over a year. It doesn't make sense. I think we got a good candidate here, and we need to get our HR position filled. HR position is not just important for the administrator and the senior staff, it's also important for employees. Employees go to the HR person for all kinds of personal reasons. Yeah, Tor.
Yeah, you kind of beat me to it there on a couple of things I was about to say. You know, your HR person, first of all, keeps you out of court or tries to very hard. And that, you know, a good HR person can stop problems before they really are problems. And that's what we're after. And in order to do that, they really need to be here. I mean, we having people remotely help and things is a stopgap measure at best. And like you said, Vex, one of the reasons we have a city manager is so that he or she can spend the time to find the candidate and because he's gonna be your boss. A couple of quick notes. First of all, there's nothing wrong with ambition. I mean, if people are trying to move up, and if you get somebody who's a real hard hitter, they're going to leave this position better than they left it. Hopefully, he'll be here for a number of years. And I can tell you, I've been offered jobs in Alaska at significantly more than I'm making now, and I didn't take it for a very good reason. It's a tough place to live, and so I don't, not at all surprised somebody would want to get out of there.
Other comments from the assembly? Call for the vote.
Okay, on the motion to approve the hire offer for Michelle Murdoch as Human Resources Director, Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Dr. Wien?
No.
Mr. Eisenbeiß?
Yes.
Ms. Nelson?
No.
Mr. Knox?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
And Mayor Paxton?
Yes.
The motion passes 5-2 on item G.
We're now at item H.
Mayor, on this next item, I would ask to be recused. Historically, I have been, because my business hopefully stands to benefit if the assembly does pass this.
I'll make a motion.
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, we gotta make a motion.
Discussion, do we need a motion, Sarah?
Yes, eventually you'll need to make a motion to approve the dates that you'd like to. I mean, first, I guess I would recommend to have a discussion and then make a motion.
Yeah, let's have a discussion.
Okay.
And if we agree to do this, then we'll have a motion. Discussion on this item of sales tax-free day after Thanksgiving?
So
Yes.
Friday and Saturday.
Every year, I think we ask the same question, and that is, what does the sales tax holiday cost the city? And I noted in the memo it wasn't there. I kind of remember what it was last year. So I was wondering if through historically, Ms. Haley could, please let us know what the fiscal note is for the city. Okay.
Of course, it'd be impossible to tell for sure. So.
Other comments? Do we
You're
want to have a
kidding.
motion to move forward, or do we
Yeah,
want
I
to
mean,
wait?
I think we should continue what we've been doing.
Want to
I
make a
can make,
motion?
yeah, I move to authorize Friday, November 27th and Saturday, November 28th as sales tax-free days for 2020, noting the sales tax-free days will not be applicable to any sale of fuel, alcohol beverages, tobacco products, and marijuana, nor affect any sale which is part of a continuing obligation of the buyer to pay the seller over time.
Second.
Comments from the public? Once, twice. Okay, it's back to the assembly. Waiting on Melissa's fiscal note.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing it this way while we're waiting for forever. I don't see, I mean, I've been known to give bottles of good whiskey for Christmas presents, maybe, but,
Well, the question is that this is a tax item, and there needs to be some fiscal note. This is just a question of completeness, and we've had it in prior years. So I just feel that this is a reasonable thing. I am certainly going to vote yes for it. I think it's a great idea. But we're dealing with government here, and therefore this is a fiscal item, and requesting a fiscal note should not really, it should be just a matter of course. So.
what he's saying it wasn't. But I think it's interesting that it's. the
How we doing,
point here-
Melissa?
Do you ready? But I think we do get some sales that we normally wouldn't get. Gets people down there, even if it's not what they go down to get. People, you buy things you weren't really expecting to buy, right? Because you're in the stores, and so I think it.
Do you have an order of magnitude, Melissa?
I want to say that it could be around $50,000.
Yeah, I remember last year was like 40-ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it's, as with all of these things, it's, you know, the public needs to know the costs of things that we do and decide on. And I think that's part of good governance.
Yeah, will you make that available to the assembly when you find out, and to the public, so they know if it's other discussions? Is that satisfactory with you, Dr. Wayne? Yeah, call for the vote.
Okay, the motion before you is to authorize November 27th and 28th as sales tax-free days. Dr. Ween?
Yes.
Mr. Knox?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mayor Paxton?
Yes.
Ms. Nelson?
Yes.
And Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0 on item H.
We are now at item I, which is update and discussion of the CARES Act Working Group progress. But before we hear from the city administrator, I open it for public comment to be taken before we have the assembly, the administrator update us. Any public comment before we go on this?
My name is Mr. Lee. I'm here to talk about the CARES Act. I'm really disappointed how the Assembly is lagging getting the CARES Act. I know you guys have some money in there, and we have to move on to give the CARES Act to the business too. I think you guys are lagging. It needs to proceed because this year is almost 2020 is almost done. Okay, and another thing is I'm really upset with the Assembly. It's not a question or anything, but it's true fact. The Assembly says that if the resident of Sitka sue the city, that the money will be returned to the federal. And I'm really disappointed. The words is easy to say, but where is your action? Where is your heart for the people? And like I said, this is a fact. So I know who you are. Just be responsible what you say, because you're here to represent the people, not the government, but the people of Sitka. And I'm tired of this because, you know, you guys are doing it for yourself. It's not for the people. That's why we have 8 candidates that's running for assembly this year. And I'm really, really proud of the candidates who's running this year, because they know the fact that the assembly here is not, you know, helping the people. We, as a citizen, has the right to receive the CARES Act fair as possible. And let's proceed before 2020 is over. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hello, everybody. How we doing?
Okay.
Working? Okay. Couple things. Of course, the CARES Act money, you know, has really been a bone of contention with me. But there's a couple things. I'm hoping we're gonna hear the numbers tonight of how much money was actually put into the so-called first round of CARES Act money. Second of all, I'd like to know, how many people in the assembly that may have businesses and stuff, how many of you guys are gonna receive the CARES Act money? Because I'd like to know, because if you're giving it to yourselves and you're not giving it to the other businesses in this town, there's an issue there. It's a problem. Second, let me see my note here. Well, I won't belabor this, but I would just like those couple answers. I hope we're going to hear those here after the public comments. And also, thank you. I think you did the right thing by voting down the commissioner spot earlier, because the last thing
As
we
a
need...
point of order, that's not relevant to the motion that's on the table.
Last thing we need in this town is another lefty in a power position. Thank you.
Point of order. Mr. Mayor, could we actually get an update from the administrator first? Because I think it
Sure.
might answer some of the questions and
Yeah.
maybe bring up additional questions that people might have.
Yeah, Kevin, can I just make a statement before you do that, please? Yeah. We might have another public comment, Kevin, before we do that. Come up. Yeah, it's important in our town that we care about each other by the way we act and we talk, and we the assembly could always do better, but most of us are trying the best we can as staff, and so just want to feel good about each other in our town and be helpful for one another, supportive of one another. Okay. Yes, ma'am, please.
Mr. Mayor and Assembly, this is, I hope my notes are,
Ma'am, the clerk's asking you to identify your name.
oh, hi, I'm Linda Marlin, hi. Rob Allen is in charge of, I do believe, the city got $14 million of the CARES Act. Am I correct? Am I correct?
This is not interactive. We
Okay.
we listen to what your comments then.
Okay, and then we have, I realize that we have Robin Sherman, who is in charge of putting this money out to nonprofits.
Just make your comments and
Okay.
you tell us what your concerns are, and then we'll...
Okay, my concerns are, Sitka Conservatives got $300,000 for nonprofit, and then there's a trail thing that's going on that got $200,000 in a separate contract. I want to know, this CARES Act money that was put out for the people. It was, and I have to agree with it. It wasn't put out for just Joe Blow over here and Joe Blow over there. This was put out for the people. And it's very aggravating. The trailer park that people live down below me, anybody been to these people and asked them, hey, maybe a little bit more money per person? They could probably make a car payment, maybe pay it off, or maybe make some payments that they needed to make, or maybe buy a freezer and fill it up with food. These people here in town, they're having a rough time. And I don't know if you folks, I've been a waitress here 35 years. I know you all. And it aggravates me. Some of you guys were kids that I know you all. And it just is sad. And I just felt it was supposed to be for the people. It's not because the city's broke here, we fell behind here. So now we got this CARES Act money. How much money are you making on the interest? You have this money for how long? How much interest have you done? You say you're going to be doing the electric bill. You haven't done the electric bill. No one knows what's going on with electricity. You talk to everybody. No, we don't know what's going on. Our mortgage, it goes up. And how much business do we have in town? We have none. No one's working this year. But the school teachers, government workers, city workers are all getting a paycheck. You guys aren't there. Anybody else, they're not getting anything. We have 600 trollers out there. Those are independent businessmen. those guys need to be in on this too. So, thank you so kindly.
Thank you, ma'am. Other comments from the public? Once, twice? Okay. Mr. Administrator, you want to?
Sorry, Mr. Schmidt is
Yep,
approaching the bench.
right.
Hi, I'm Roger Schmidt, Director of the Sitka Fine Arts Camp. Dear Assembly, City staff, and CARES Act Task Force, thank you for your service to our community, especially your willingness to serve in public office. I would also like to thank City Administrator John Leach and recognize the exceptional job he's been doing since assuming his new position at the onset of the pandemic. I'm here to comment on CARES Act funding. I recommend a second round of support to businesses that is based on employment and a demonstration of significant financial harm. Funding should go directly to organizations that need the most help to stay solvent and have the most positive impact on our community. This matches the intent of the CARES Act, which is, quote, to help cities cover unanticipated costs from COVID-19, including providing for direct assistance for people and businesses who are struggling to pay rent, utilities, and other bills because of the pandemic and its economic impact. Like many other businesses, we've been hit hard by the pandemic. In March, our board of directors, recognizing the Sitka Fine Arts Camp responsibility to the safety of our community and state, canceled our summer camp, which serves 1,000 students annually, and closed the Hames Fitness Center. By mid-April, 2 more vital income sources for our business shut down: event rentals, conferences, retreats, field courses, weddings, and the Performing Arts Center. Adding to the dire financial situation, we saw a significant reduction to contributed income as our donors reacted to the chaos of the pandemic, and many large funders shifted their priorities to direct pandemic response. The decision to close Fine Arts Camp 2020 has been catastrophic to our organization. However, the decision proved essential to the safety of our community as increasing reports emerged of spikes in COVID-19 cases linked to summer camps throughout the country. Ultimately, the Fine Arts Camp gave up over $1 million in potential revenue to keep our local statewide community safe, including tuition, ticket sales, event revenues, and Hames Center's memberships. As a result, we've had to furlough 75% of our full-time staff for 4 months, minimized utility usage in buildings, downgraded insurance, canceled construction and maintenance work on the campus. As facts of driving economic force in the community, our contributions can be measured in full and part-time employment of over 30 Sitkans. Last year, over $1 million was brought in outside funding through donors and grants. $120,000 spent annually by camp visitors that come to Sitka. In 2011 to the present, we brought in over $6 million of capital projects which directly benefit our local businesses and the contractors. And each year we pay over $40,000 in annual sales tax. This has been a difficult time financially for our organization, like so many other organizations, and I would ask that the Assembly consider the direct economic hardship, ask that businesses demonstrate economic hardship in order to participate in any additional funding. Appreciate all your work. Thank you so much. And it means a lot to me that everybody's willing to serve in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Right. Other comments from the public? Okay, back to the Assembly. Okay, Mr. Administrator.
Hopefully we have a lot of time because I have a lot of comments and I can answer a lot of these questions.
Right.
If I could reach into my bullpen and ask Melissa to come up here. She doesn't know I'm calling on her, but I'm going to need her support for a little bit of this.
Before you head, Kevin said he might want to speak. Kevin Knox first.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you, Kevin?
No, I was hoping that John could, bring forward some of this before we had some of the public comment, because I think he's going to answer a lot of the questions that are being asked.
I think he will.
So we can just move forward from here.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Assembly members. I'm going to start from the top. And this is straight from the U.S. Treasury and OMB, Office of Management and Budget. CARES Act requires that payments from the Coronavirus Relief Fund only be used to cover expenses that, 1, are necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency with respect to the coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19. 2, were not accounted for in the budget most recently approved as of March 27, 2020 for the state or government. And 3, were incurred during the period that begins on March 1st, 2020 and ends on December 30th, 2020. There are 16 categories that the CARES money can be spent in. I'm going to read those off. 1, administrative expenses. 2, budgeted personnel and services diverted to a substantially different use. 3, payroll for public health and safety employees. 4, COVID-19 testing and contact tracing. 5, workers' compensation claims. 6, medical expenses. 7, improved telework capabilities of public employees. 8, expenses associated with the issuance of tax anticipation notes. 9, facilitating distance learning. 10, public health expenses, including personal protective equipment. 11, nursing home assistance. 12, food programs. 13, housing support. 14, small business assistance. 15, other economic support other than small business, housing, and food assistance. And number 16, other items not listed above to include other eligible expenses that are not captured in the available expenditure categories. So before I go on to how much money has been spent and expended in the sectors that we've spent the money, Melissa, if you could take just 2 minutes or less to kind of explain how the grant money comes in. You know, are we going to be reimbursed later, or is that money sitting in account gaining interest? Can you explain that process, please?
Sure. So we have, we got our first disbursement of $6.8 million and change. That went into a dedicated special revenue fund. We have it in a separate fund. We're not required to, but we have it in one because we are required to track the interest separately. The interest has to be dispersed along the exact same lines as the primary funding. When we spend 80% of that funding, we will submit a report to the state and we will get the next round of funding. I don't recall off the top of my head the amount, but there's really kind of three different chunks that it will come in. And I think that covers it. Included in the existing CARES Act appropriations that you already made, we made an estimate for interest. So that is part of the funding that we've been dealing with as we've been estimating interest.
Thank you. So I'd like to go through the categories very quickly to recap, as I do each time we talk about this. Category 1 was utility and harbor assistance. That was $4.5 million allocated for that program. That is directly to the people. Directly to the people. Utility and mortgage credits, residential utility credits, $1.675 million directly to the residents. Business utility credits, I know this has changed. There was a little bit of a change, but it's when I wrote this down, $711,000 to business utility credits. I think that's gone up just a little bit from there. Mortgage credits, nearly $300,000. There was a small amount of staff overtime who came in on the weekend to process these applications for a total spent of just under $2.7 million. There's $1.8 million remaining in that fund that we can reallocate later. Again, that is $2.7 million directly to the people from Category 1.
When are those going to hit people's accounts?
Those are they're hitting right now.
Okay.
Yep, they're all out.
Category 2 is our business and nonprofit grant programs. I believe we had $5 million allocated to that program. Rob Allen that is true, he has been hired as a grant analyst for us, but he is not an approval of any applications. Finance is the first level of approval once the applications come in. I'm the first level of appeal, and then it goes to the assembly after that if we are not able to reach a resolution. As of today, let me see if my math is correct, 0.0 applications have been denied. We have received 667 applications thus far. 436 of those applications have been processed. They're entered into a database that we will review once they're all in there. There have been a number of emails and phone calls back and forth explaining whether or not people are eligible for the things they applied for, and then we will get to review that database as all these applications are in. Right now, 47% of the applications that are received have either been incomplete or have incorrect information and they require follow-up. I've been getting many compliments on Mr. Allen's ability to answer back quickly. It was well, I won't name the store, but I stopped in a store this weekend and they were very impressed with how quickly their questions were answered. Current issues outstanding on applications processed is about at 104 applications, or 24% of them. $2.12 million of requests so far have been processed. $4,840 is the average per application. If it continues on this same trend, there will be $3.24 million in requests. We'll go through here by sector now. Of the 436 applications that have been processed, the fishing industry is 165 of those applications. That represents 38%, over a third of the number of applications we have received for grants. Nonprofits, 35 applications. That represents 8% of the total number of applications received. Tourism, 45, that's 10%. Retail, 23 applications, that's 5%. Restaurant and food service, 14 applications, making up 3%. Rentals, both short-term and long-term, we've received 23 have been processed, that's 5%. And all other small businesses represent 31% of the applications received. By dollar category, the $2,500 grant level, about 51% of them fall in that level. $5,000 level is 21%, and $7,500 is 12%. The $10,000 level is at 16%. So of our $5 million, we anticipate $3.24 million will be spent if this average holds up, and that, again, is directly to the people. Category 3, you might have to help me out with the numbers. I'm trying to go by memory here. Category 3 is where we're trying to get our housing assistance, which is one of the categories here in the 16 eligible uses. A quick update to that one, we allocated $750,000 for that program. We're working on a subrecipient agreement, if it hasn't been signed yet, but I haven't signed that final copy yet. $500,000 for an extension of the state's program for housing assistance. It will be here in Sitka until the end of the year. $250,000 remains that we are looking at a way to support our homeless population, and I just released an RFI today that should hit the paper tomorrow for interested parties that want to assist with that program. The transitional employment program, I believe it was $750,000 we had for that as well. $300,000 is a contract that we're negotiating with the Sitka Conservation Society right now. And again, I will say that money goes directly to the citizens in a form of benefiting the citizens by recreational and economic opportunities, plus it's putting our citizens to work. That's one of the requirements, is they have to hire Sitka citizens to complete the work. It will be putting money back in their pocket if they're unemployed or underemployed. $450,000 of that remains for City Hall to hire Sitka citizens to go back to work if they are unemployed or underemployed, directly to the citizens. Child care. Mr. Knox, do you remember how much allocated towards child care? I think it was $500,000.
Yep.
$500,000 and $400,000 is the amount we're trying to put towards local child care resources.
And we have a $400,000 subrecipient agreement with the THREAD program, and it will be a subsidy per child to the child care provider. So if they have a full-time or a part-time child, they receive a subsidy that keeps them operating. $100,000 of that is still in reserve if we want to do an extension of that program, or if we want to expand child care opportunities within Sitka for other providers. It was $200,000 for the food assistance program,
Yes.
which has already been distributed to the Sitka Tribe of Alaska, and they're working with partner agencies, and food is being delivered right now. And our local fishermen, our citizens, are out there catching fish right now, and we're purchasing that fish from them, putting the money back into our economy. What other programs did I forget in Category 3?
I think that covers Category 3.
Okay. Category 4, was
School
that
district?
the school district?
Yep, that money's gone out.
We received a report from them already. That was a subrecipient agreement. $430,000 went directly to them in one lump sum.
Yep.
And they use that for the one-to-one purchase of electronic devices to help for remote learning, distance learning, which is here in the eligible expenses, and for workers to assist at the schools. Category 5 is our city needs. That I do not have an exact update on where we are with spending on that one. I can bring that back at the next meeting, but that's the work around City Hall and some of the other buildings as far as working on social distancing measures, bankers' windows, sanitation efforts, and just building and IT upgrades. That is less than $1 million for the entire $14 million. And that money, believe it or not, will end up directly towards the citizens, meaning it's going to improve our infrastructure where we will not have to spend the money later. The rest of the money is about $640,000. That's what we've held in contingency, and that's for paying first responders, overtime wages, anything that's directly related to COVID in accordance with this, plus keeping a contingency budget held and things that we can spend quickly to get to our next level, to receive our next round of funding. So hopefully I've given you a good update on where we are, and I'm happy to address any questions.
Go ahead, sorry. Just a quick question. I've been seeing the letters and because of the EOC stuff, but apparently FEMA is not going to be helping us much. And we're going to have to be using CARES Act for some of our response that we didn't really expect to. Not a whole lot of money, but it's irritating.
Can you get like a ballpark? Do you have a ballpark on that?
I don't have a ballpark, but I did see the letter today. It begins September 15th. Basically, FEMA says, did you look at your other sources of money first before you go to FEMA? And then there's a small eligibility list that we can get reimbursed from FEMA. So they are leaning on us using our CARES funds for emergency response efforts.
Okay.
Dr. Wayne?
In category 3, you mentioned that there's under transitional employment, you have a contract with Sitka Conservational Society. You mentioned that they have to be Sitkans, they have to hire Sitkans. Well, in order to get voter registration, you only have to be here 30 days. So my question is, who is a Sitkan? Because there are many people here in need, and if you construct, for example, I don't know exactly what chores they will be doing, but are they the chores of a 20-year-old, or can a 45-year-old furloughed or unemployed individual do the same thing? So my question is, with the transitional employment, how inclusive is it going to be with all of those people who might be in need, and what the definition of a Sitkan is? So that's a question.
It's a tough question. As far as what a Sitkan is, whatever defines a resident of Sitka, I'm not sure if that's being registered to vote. We didn't outline that specifically in the contract. It just says that they must be a resident of Sitka. As far as demographics and what kind of work is available, there's 5 or 6 projects that they're working on. And hiring practices have to be within the federal hiring guidelines, so it's non-discriminatory. There is some work that will be physical work, and that could be a discriminator in some respects, but another thing to keep in mind is we're still negotiating that contract. It has not been finalized, and I'll be happy to share it once it's complete.
Yeah, my notion is to be inclusive as possible. We heard Mr. Schmidt talk about when the second round of funding comes is to ask that businesses demonstrate economic hardship. I would think that would be also a reasonable question to include in the contractual hiring about economic hardship, because this is directly money into people's pockets, and to me that's a matter of concern, so thank you.
And the contract did state that they have to be unemployed or underemployed to receive or to get a job with the organization. And for what it's worth, we have been speaking as we negotiate through this contract, and there is some concern that not enough people are applying for the job. So we're trying to find that magic point where people will come back to work and trying to figure out why some are not.
I have a question and then a comment. My question to you, Mr. Leach, is when this is all said and done, will this be made public? Because we had somebody tonight say, how many of us have applied for it? And I will, under disclosure, say, I applied for 2. One for my husband's rental business, one for another business. Both of them had problems. I understand they haven't been denied. I've tried to clarify the things, but I have a business that I didn't apply for, so there's my disclosure.
So is your question, will it all be made public? My intent is once everything is closed out, I will make every dollar spent public. I'm probably going off on a tangent here, but I've purchased some software for the city. It's called Open Finance, and it'll be up on our website. Hopefully, once we purchase it, they say 6 to 8 weeks, they'll have everything mapped out and online. But the intent is to show the citizens with graphs and every bit of data that they would want where every single dollar in the city is going. It's going to take some time, but that is coming.
I've got 2 questions. First is, of this money that you just talked about, the 3.24 million, has that money actually been sent out yet? And if not, when will it be sent out? And my second question is, I then want to talk about the 3.6 million we have for the second round. And this is my personal view, is I agree with Roger Smith. That should be targeted. And now that's can be a sophisticated challenge, but I think you need to come up with a system in that second round where you're targeted towards those businesses that we need to help survive the deal. So anyway, those are my 2 questions.
So your first question is, we hope to have all the applications processed by the end of this week or early next week. Once they're all processed, then we get our opportunity to look at them, and hopefully we'll be sending checks out before the end of the month. I hate to put that out there now, but the goal is we'll be sending the checks out before the end of the month.
You got to do it right, but sooner is better than later. I mean, we've been, where's the beef kind of thing. So, I know, listen, I know that this is part of our team, but this has been an exhaustive, challenging thing that this committee has done to take care of this CARES Act, and I think that they've done a pretty remarkable job. But we're getting near to the point we need to get the money out there and do it. Okay.
And as far as the next round of funding, there are ideas out there right now, and I plan on bringing that on the 22nd agenda. But I personally agree with a targeted approach. One of the requirements of COVID funding is you have to show a hardship. So an economic hardship, however we decide. Absolutely. So one of the criteria, or some of the criteria were some of the ideas we're toying with right now is what are your year-over-year revenue losses from this time last year versus this year? And we're looking at number of employees. We're looking at did you keep your employees? Did you have to furlough employees? We're coming up with a way to first look to see if you got a grant in the first round of this, and then if there is a supplemental need based on the economic hardship, we may be able to target in something else. So we're talking about those ideas now.
Yeah,
So I'm glad to hear the timelines, because, I mean, I was curious, and for some reason, near and dear to my heart is the utility one. But, and I'm glad that those are going out now. And I'm very happy to hear that gets out, the first round is going out by the first of the month or early, soon after. I think we need to understand, we said over and over again, this isn't going to make anybody whole. It's just trying to get some money out as fast as we can and still follow the rules. Because, you know, we don't want to get in trouble with the feds because, like I said, they could yank it all and then we could be on the hook for it. And I would like to briefly echo what the mayor was saying about the targeted second round, which is going to be almost as big as the first round. We're going to have to move very fast, so we're going to have to use the KISS principle. But one of the things I didn't like about our first round was it didn't really help our big employers very much. The Allen Marines, I'm not sure about how hard the fish plants were hit, the Fine Arts Camp. Some of our largest employers where 15,000 is nothing. The number I heard that Allen Marine was losing 300,000 a month. I don't know if that's true or not exactly, but I think we need to try and get some money out to our long-term Sitka companies, be it for-profit or nonprofit, to try and do everything we can to make sure that they're here next year. And if we can, I think we would meet the both legal and I guess the spirit of the CARES Act.
And I'll just make a comment because I'm on the CARES Act group. Yeah, I did what you're saying, Tor. When we first started, we got the message loud and clear that we needed to get money out there and get it out there right away. And although the cash disbursements hasn't even happened yet, that is actually at a fast pace considering all the things that all the hoops we've been jumping through. So the first, it's great that the utility thing is already happening. The grants, yes, there was a check mark, have you been affected, and your revenue. And, that was our best guess on the way to do it. And so right now I'm inclined to do another round. I think we should try to get another round out there, but we need to get more of the data, more of the details of how much, and then come up with some ballpark numbers to give to the Assembly on the 28th. And I would also prefer a more targeted, but that's the tricky part. I don't want to show favorites, and so that's going to be tricky, how we determine that. I want to be as fair as possible, but yes, we need to try to be a little more focused so that people who've been affected can get some more money.
Yeah, it can be tricky.
Yeah, Valerie? Go ahead.
We're taking a lot of heat up here for a lot of stuff that's going on. We're not moving fast enough. We're not giving enough to this person. We're not giving enough to that person. We had somebody that's campaigning for office tonight tell us how disappointed he is in the Assembly, and a particular Assembly member that gave out misinformation. I said to somebody that had said they were going to sue us, that if they sued us and an injunction was filed, the money would be tied up and in all probability couldn't be dispersed by the end of the year and would be sent back. I'm being told that I'm giving legal advice and I should have consulted with the attorney. I was just trying to be helpful. That's all I've tried to do. You people don't know how bad it's going to get. I don't know if any of you have tried to book tickets out of here. We have one jet coming in pretty soon in the evening and it leaves in the morning. We can't go to Seattle without going to Juneau or Anchorage. We can't come home to Sitka without going to Juneau or Anchorage. If we want to go to Ketchikan, you probably have to take the milk run from Sitka to Juneau and then down to Ketchikan. But it's bad. And you talk about people suffering. Alaska Airlines is laying off a lot of people. They've given early retirements. And none of us know the full depth of it. We don't even know here. I mean, I guess once we see the first quarter sales tax returns, we're going to notice that those are down. But once we see the ones that were filed July 31st, I bet we're going to be, and you probably have already seen preliminary numbers from the accounting staff. I've not seen them yet, but I'm very, very concerned. And all I want to say is we're doing the best that we can. I'm not on the working group, but I try to keep tabs. We have Kevin Knox and Kevin Mosier, and if you have questions, they are the ones that probably could help you, and I will not give advice on social media anymore. Thank you.
Noted. Yes, Dr. Wayne.
Well, that sounds like K2. That's a big mountain in the Himalayas. Kevin and Kevin, when we talk about a focused disbursement, I understand what that means. At our first round, when I had asked that we ask for a little information, all I got back was we're going to have a checkbox that says I was financially implicated. And we also heard that they're not going to audit. Because, there is just so much out there. But the truth is, we can see with FEMA, they are auditing quite substantially. And so one of the things, if you are going to do focused, then I really want you to focus. I want you to focus on financial reports over years, over 990s, how much is in the bank account, and really do some form of analysis, because the purpose of this is to have a hand. And as Assemblyman Christensen said, it's not going to make you whole. And those people who might be circling the drain now, I don't think there's enough money potentially to necessarily prevent that. So we need to, it's kind of like using blood products in where you're not going to save a life. And so if you're going to do a focused, and it seems out of my hands, then I would expect a true financial review and not just a checkbox to say, I am hurt. So this way we will be able to disperse in an appropriate way to those who really need it.
Okay, any other, John?
I appreciate Dr. Ween's comments, and I agree. The intent of this first round, and I think everybody here knows it, is we're more or less buying a study, which was the reason for the grant amounts being low. And in the amount of time it was going to take us to get that real dialed-in data to get those targeted grants out there, I think people would have been suffering for quite a while we waited for that. So I think this, in my mind, this first round of the smaller grants to gain the economic data and still get some help out there really drives us into making a better decision in the second round. And I think we have a lot more reliable data to help out.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the next item then? You got the guidance?
Yeah, I think we're good to go to the next one.
Good. But a lot of good work is going on. And by further public information, as they do this analysis, they also know what different entities have gotten from other sources, state sources, and so on and so forth. Okay, we're now at item J, discussion, direction, decision on the CARES Act appropriations.
Maybe have John give us a spiel first
John,
before we.
I was actually going to call Melissa up for this one.
Okay.
This is basically the explanation is why we have to make an appropriation, even though the CARES funding is there, and she can explain that.
Yep. How do you like being finance director?
5 days in. So this is kind of, another annoying housekeeping item. So by our charter, we are required to make appropriations based on what kind of expenses they are. Are they fixed assets? Is it personnel? Because it's in our charter, it dictates that the administrator, he can move, if he needs to move something from, because we put something in supplies that should be contract expenses, that he can move around freely. But he can't move between all of those other kinds of expenses, fixed assets, and personnel. This whole CARES Act thing has been kind of fast and furious, and honestly, we didn't think through all the tiny nuances, but even if we had, we don't know exactly how much is going to be spent on personnel. We need to keep fairly agile. If we don't spend all of the transitional employment, we might need to fairly quickly repurpose it. And so I just wanted to have a conversation with you about how you want us to deal with that. Do you want to give direction that the administrator, for this purpose only, can make these internal adjustments? Or do you want us to come back to you after this is all done and we do a cleanup appropriation, say, well, we ended up having this much that was fixed assets, this much that was personnel, and this much that was all
What's
of
your
the other.
recommendation?
I think the easiest one that would require the less time would just be for you to give the administrator the authority to do that. I mean, you know, he's giving you regular updates anyway. There's not going to be any surprises. But, you know, certainly at the end of this, if we have money left over, we're going to be probably analyzing things toward the end of December, and we'll have to very rapidly make some decisions there.
Do what's right, get it done, and when you get it ready, let us see it.
I have a question for
It sounds to me like this is in the purview of the administration.
Yeah, but if we go with that option B, so to speak, it strikes me that we run the risk of sometime in November, December, having come forward to us saying, okay, we got to do this cleanup ordinance, or where the money's already been spent, and we really won't have any choice at that point, which we trust it. So in a sense, if we go with option B, we're going with option A, because it's going to be already spent. We're not going to really have a whole lot of latitude, unless we really want to make your life miserable at that point.
So it's option A you're talking about, would be the cleanest on this possible motions.
Is that going to slow stuff down?
No, that's going to be the easiest. That's going to let John just adjust the appropriations as
Do
needed.
we need to make such a motion? Okay. I move to give the municipal administrator authority to move existing appropriations between expenses, fixed assets, and personnel, so long as the thresholds of the categories approved are maintained, limited to CARES Act funding only.
Second.
Okay. Motion and seconded. Public comment? Back to the assembly. Yes, Dr. Wayne.
I like transparency, and that's why I was kind of leaning towards B, because it still makes a public, disclosure necessary, as you had stated, that it'll have to be a listing of things that are being spent. We can always have a special meeting if we feel that it's on the clock, and I know assembly members enjoy coming in and having special meetings. But the important thing here is that this is municipal government. And to me, whatever the most transparent of options is the best. I trust Mr. Leach empirically. That being said, I also believe that we need to have the ability to come back to the assembly and explain and outline and have that discussion. So that's why I can't vote for option A, even though it may appear easier. K2 is actually harder to climb than Mount Everest. So.
I think, won't there be a cleanup one at the end anyway, even if we go with option A?
We can certainly do that. It would be it would just be, there would not be an option to change it. We would be coming forward and saying, at the end of the day, we spent this much in this category, this much in, for fixed assets, this much for personnel.
Which I would imagine we would be eating that no matter what.
We could do it, and transparency will be easy. I mean, give me a break. I just don't want to slow things down based on bureaucratic hama stuff. Okay, any other comments? Yes, Steve.
So John, once again, this puts a lot of faith in you. So I'm just saying it again, as I said last time, do right by the assembly and do right by the citizens on this, because it's a lot more rides on your shoulders this way. So thank you.
Got it?
Okay, on the motion to approve option A, Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbeis,
Yes.
Mayor Paxton,
Yes.
and Dr. Ween.
No.
Motion passes 6-1 on item J.
We are now under persons to be heard on an item on or off the agenda. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I am Tori O'Connell Curran, and I apologize that I wasn't here earlier in the meeting before your discussion on Mr. Huey's appointment to the Police and Fire Commission. I'm going to read this because otherwise I'll forget what I was going to say. Sitka has a lot of boards with spaces, and we need people to step up. This is a good way for people to understand the role of local government and contribute, giving them experience so they can then run for assembly, etc. If you reject someone because they disagree with you, you are not embracing the whole community, and you defeat the purpose of these advisory boards. You should want diversity of opinion on the commission so it actually represents the whole community. Regarding Mr. Huey, Sitka appropriate people, Dr. Ween? A young person who grew up here that wants to work within the system, even when they disagree with that system, is a voice you need. The commission is not the Police Benevolent Society. It is an oversight board, and the very fact that there have been rocky times in that department in the past points to the need for some new people and diversity of ideas on the commission. It is not something to be afraid of, and I doubt Chief Beatty would be afraid to have discussions with Mr. Huey. In the future, I hope you will allow a diversity of views on these boards and commissions. Thank you for the opportunity to comment, and I do thank you for your service. I know it's a hard job.
Thank you, Tori. Other comments from the public? Yes.
Smith, fisherman. You were talking a minute ago, you mentioned a third of the fishermen. I would suggest you keep your doors wide open because there's 2/3 more. They're all having a bad summer. Fishers are down a lot of places. I don't care about that. We live with that. But prices are down because restaurants are closed. That's going to affect every one of these fishermen. They can't buy the fish. They'll only buy so many fish because they don't know what to do with the fish because 50 of the darn states are shut down. The restaurants are all shut down. So the price, these guys are all hanging out on a limb that are buying the stuff. So like I say, stand by. There's 2/3 more coming. Also about your jobs. I always found when I was a fisherman, when I didn't have the money I needed, I looked for wintertime employment. There you go. You probably have a bunch of young fishermen that are trying to make money. They'd probably like to buy boats and stuff like that. This is not the year. They may just be looking at surviving. I talked to a little seiner the other day. He made $7,000 this year. Last year he made 20. Now, humpies, who cares what the seiners are doing anyway? That's just that. Blackcod's down, halibut's down, all of it's down because the restaurants are closed. That's what the problem is. So I think you're going to find a number of fishermen here. September 20th it closes. I would suggest something to get the word out to these people because they are all going to have to live through this winter, and it's going to be a rugged one on them.
Thank you, sir.
Well, apparently I ruffled some feathers when me and a couple other people came up and asked questions earlier. Sorry about that, but as a public, we have the right to ask questions, and I will never bow to the altar of any of you guys or any other altar, so I only bow in front of God, and that's it. So that being said, I'm really disturbed about the $5 million to the nonprofits. $5 million, or did I hear that wrong? Yes. Oh, okay, good. I'm glad I did because you don't have to look so disgusted, sir. You know what? See, this is why, see how he's acting right there? This is why people don't have trust in the assembly. That being said, I'm going to step away, but thank you because I obviously made a mistake. He looked at me, shakes his head, and gives a condescending look. Well, that's what it's
Marshall, we
all
have to
about.
refrain
Thank you.
from personal attacks. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Other comments from the public?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Assembly members. For the record, my name is George Paul. Two things. First off, I thought when the Assembly passed the emergency ordinances a couple meetings back, that gave the administrator authority to take care of things so that money can get out. And then after the fact, you can do the housekeeping measures. There were a lot of people encouraged to apply for the utility assistance. It was a couple months ago, and they were in fear of losing their utilities. And I've heard that there are a lot of people that have got disconnect notices, and the fear has changed to terror that they might. And I thought that it was already paid for. So in that instance, I was wrong. Secondly, the earlier appointment thing, I shifted my opinion as to, after hearing the facts and that, I think what you all did tonight was appropriate. I think it was a good process. But future tense, there still has to be an appointment made to the Police and Fire Commission. And what I would like to present to you, having a military background and having been in the service for so long, look at the individuals that the Police and Fire Commission are advisory board over. The police department and the fire department are a military type operation out of necessity. And these are individuals that respect an entity like a commission, and they call those individuals sir, and they call them ma'am, and they give them the respect of being a direct boss, even though it's an advisory committee. So in the next deliberation for an appointee to the Police and Fire Commission, I would ask that the Assembly members, even though it's just an advisory committee, understand that it's being appointed over a working body that necessity requires they treat that board as bosses. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Hello, Mayor and Assembly. And thank you for everything you guys do. I really highly respect everything you guys do all the time. But there is a lot of people out here that are having a rough time. Like I say, I've been a waitress. I worked in the Sheffield House, Shattuck. I worked at the Bayview. I worked at Victoria's, opened that up. Canoe Club. Canoe Club. You should know the Canoe Club. But anyways, all of these people, I say these businesses, but in these businesses, there are cooks, there are dishwashers, there are people other than just me and the business. There's a lot of people that are, there's a lot of people moving out of town. They can't get a job, they feel let down, and I just tell them, get involved, get down here, talk to the Assembly. But I'm just kind of, disappointed what's going on. I don't know what to say to these folks when they do come over and have coffee, and it's really sad to see our town lose 24 businesses just like that, and then people continue to leave the town, and then all of a sudden you hike our tax up during a pandemic. And I thought, God, during World War II, you had to have little coupons to get coffee, flour, gasoline. Anybody who has parents back then, you should know that. Because no one got a pay raise. Everything was sealed. No one got a pay raise, and all the pay was sealed. But it's sad that I hear about a lot of stuff that you guys are going to do. Every year, you should have your budget. I don't know, I'm flabbergasted of the amount of money that's going on, and I really appreciate the mayor saying, get it out there, because there are people, they need it now, not next year, And I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about the people that I see and go and talk to. So that's all. You know, and these people, they won't come here, they won't voice their opinion because they figure it's a waste of time. And I said, no, it's not a waste of time. Just get up here and talk to you. But
Thank you, Linda.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Other comments from the public? Once, twice, three, okay. We're now in reports. I have no report. Mr. Administrator?
I think I've made a long enough report already today. I have nothing else to add, Mayor.
Mr. Hanson?
Just a comment about office hours. Last week, I took some leave in the afternoons to do a personal project. I'm doing again a couple half days here this week, so you won't see me on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday in the afternoons, but I'll be available in the mornings if you need to speak with me. Thank you.
Liaison representatives? Yes, Dr. Wayne.
Well, we have the public meeting for the community health group, which was formed at the closure of Sitka Community Hospital, and that's happening on the 17th. It's supposed to be the one public meeting, so please make sure you have the 17th to be able to zoom in on those kind of meetings. I had attended EOC, the command, and also the Sitka Fishery Infectious Disease. As I am rotating off the assembly, I will no longer be attending those meetings, and it behooves the assembly to appoint a new representative to the EOC. As far as the fisheries meeting went, I was in contact with the gracious Lori Moore and ask if at the end of the season, which is coming soon, if there can't be a summary report about the fisheries, not only within Sitka and their dealing with COVID, but also perhaps a more comprehensive report from the fishery industry in Alaska as to what were the fate and how well they did. And they did a very good job in dealing with COVID, and it cost them tens of millions of dollars to do that in a very bad fishery season. So,
You made me think, Dr. Wayne. At the CETA meeting, Rich Riggs mentioned that they would probably pursue a disaster declaration because of our fishing. Yeah, our fishing has been it's a perfect storm. With everything going on, to have the kind of fishing season we've had is really troublesome. Other liaison reports. Madam Clerk?
One
I'm sorry,
report
Kevin.
from Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec met today. Michael gave a brief update about the projects that they're looking at using the employment opportunity that we have through the CARES Act funding and bringing new staff people on and doing some projects to work on some deferred maintenance in and around the city buildings and parks and schools. There was an update also on how the process went with the new ball field subcommittee. As some people know, that there's a subcommittee that was formed to address issues that arise in scheduling of the new ball or field. And there was some issues that came up during the softball season, and they worked things out through the subcommittee, and it didn't even have to rise up into the Parks and Rec Commission. So that subcommittee is working well. Tomorrow night is the first night of Ports and Harbors of the season, so I encourage anybody that's interested in dealing with harbor and port issues to attend that meeting. It's 6 o'clock tomorrow night.
Thank you, Kevin. Madam Clerk?
I wanted to remind folks, the 2020 census response time is coming to a close. The last date to complete the 2020 census is September 30th, so I encourage everyone to do that. If they haven't already, Sitka's response rate is 57% right now. So if you go to 2020census.gov, and you can also participate by phone at 844-330-2020. I wanted to also remind folks of voting options that are available with each municipal election. Those are by mail, advanced voting in person. This year, we'll be holding that at Harrigan Centennial Hall in meeting rooms 2 and 3, just down the hall. That will begin September 21st and run weekdays through October 5th. The hours will be 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Folks can also apply to vote by fax. There's the option of personal representative. And then, of course, folks can vote in person at Harrigan Hall on Election Day, and the polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's all I have.
Pax, do we need, Dr. Weiner, are you going to be at the meeting tomorrow?
No.
Okay, so do we need to appoint a new representative to the EOC?
No.
Okay.
We're now ready to go into executive session. May I have a motion, please, on item K?
I move to go into executive session to discuss the responses to the request for information issued with respect to the 17-acre waterfront parcel of municipal land located at 4951 Halibut Point Road, which involves certain matters, the immediate knowledge of which would adversely affect the finances of the municipality, and invite in Planning Director Amy Ainsley and Finance Director Melissa Haley.
Brian, did you want to give a comment about why we're doing this?
It might be helpful. The responders to the RFI have provided information that I understand you'll want to discuss, and ultimately there's going to be an RFP issued. And under those circumstances, the responses probably shouldn't be discussed because we need to protect the competitive advantage and disadvantages related to those responses. So I think it would disadvantage our city not if we allowed those type of things to be discussed, if like sales price and other issues related to the RFP were discussed.
So we did have a motion in a second, right? Public comment? Back to the assembly, ready to go? Okay, all in favor? All in favor, say aye.
If we could do a roll call.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Paxton?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen? Mr. Knox?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Dr. Ween? And Ms. Nelson?
Yes.
Yes.
And we'll be meeting in room 7.
I'm sorry, you're going to call me.
Yep.
Thanks.